Hi there, this is Aaron speaking. Today, I'd like to start things off by saying that I really like video games, which probably doesn't come as much of a surprise to you, huh? Either way, gaming is definitely the hobby that I've spent the most time engaging with, so it makes sense to me that the number of people around the world who can say the same for themselves has reached the literal billions. That being the case, it's fairly understandable that the particularly polarizing topic of whether video games are still fun or not seems to be popping up a lot more in my YouTube recommendations feed as of late. Now, usually, the videos in question tend to argue that yes, video games are indeed still fun, and obviously, I have to agree. Ever since I first received my very own Nintendo DS for Christmas over a decade ago, playing video games has been my number one go-to when it comes to leisure, and so the concept of gaming being anything but a fun time just sounds so, well, absurd to me, for lack of better words. I know, that might be a somewhat extreme way to put it, and as a matter of fact, perhaps I'm the absurd guy who's able to do things like logging over 1,000 hours into a single-player only first-person shooter that's still in early access. Furthermore, it is a sad reality that many gamers out there have stopped playing video games due to it all being more of a detriment rather than a benefit to their lives, whether it be due to money problems, time management, social life, etc., etc. However, the fact that there are people who honestly find themselves stating that they're not having fun playing video games anymore is kinda worrying in my opinion. Sure, it may be a little dramatic for me to say that, but to put things bluntly, it's because the answer to that problem is so straightforward that a 10-minute plus video on YouTube shouldn't really be required to figure things out alone. Please, just play more video games. In this current day, introducing variety to your video game library is the easiest way of ensuring that you don't experience burnout with this hobby. Get ready to watch the endless backlog of game recommendations on YouTube, and once you've done that, go ahead and play a bunch of demos for a couple hours, or better yet, use Steam's extremely underrated 2-hour refund window to do some hands-on research that way. If worse comes to worst, the option to yar har fiddle-dee-dee is always there too. One way or another, as long as you can find the drive to actually search for the things that might interest you, whilst also ensuring that you aren't just limiting yourself to what you're already familiar with. Gaming, and any pastime for that matter, shouldn't be getting stale for you anytime soon. With that out of the way, I'm also not gonna ignore the other growing sentiment that people are also starting to have when they tell us that video games aren't fun anymore. Simply put, more and more gamers are beginning to feel that modern video games have gotten worse than the stuff released back then. If anything, maybe you're starting to realize that you also feel the same way, and who could blame you? We're seeing a tremendous increase of profit-driven, microtransaction-riddled, artificially retaining video games being shoved into the market. Moreover, a lot of the great things that did come out back then are now in a less than stellar situation, whether it be a popular series getting wrung dry through the yearly release schedule, or God forbid, we get a horrible sequel that nobody asked for. Worst case scenario, we have timeless titles that are now barely playable for one reason or another. There are indeed many reasons as to why someone might believe that the modern video games industry has gone downhill. And as positive as I could try to be, well, unfortunately for us, it's inevitable that things have turned out this way. See, this trend is a given in any industry that caters to a constantly growing consumer base, which only becomes exponentially larger with each year. Just look at cars, for example. A fairly popular consensus is that the automotive industry was at its peak during the 80s, or was it the 90s? Or was it the 2000s? Yeah, basically any era other than today. So, it's typically believed that most of the vehicles being made for us now are generally a lot less enticing than what was being sold to us back then, whether it be a matter of build quality, innovation, or just the straight up cool factor. No one can deny the fact that, yeah, lots of cars these days are produced to standards which primarily satisfy the majority of buyers, or more truthfully, the bigwigs that control the whole show, such as the higher-ups within the car company itself and the faceless investors that those higher-ups are trying to appease. Sounds like a pretty familiar story, right? Now, considering all of this, would you like to know what my take on the matter is? Well, I personally believe that we're in the best era of gaming yet, as well as cars, despite the current circumstances. Yeah, our situation doesn't look so good when we focus on the majority of things that are being served to us right now. Yet, why does that matter? Video games have been around for about half a century. There's nothing stopping us from just playing the countless amount of amazing games that came out long before this debate was even a thing on the internet. Whether it be indie or classic, emulated or remastered, it would be weird to avoid playing things from a couple years back if modern video games seem to be in such a bad state, right? Alternatively, going full pessimist mode doesn't do us any favors either. It's true that the amount of AAA slop hitting the market has reached an all-time high, but this shouldn't overshadow the fact that we're still seeing a steady release of games that could arguably be labeled as the best things we've seen so far. I'm sure you don't need me to tell you any examples, because you've probably played a few of them already. At the end of the day, the phrase "video games aren't fun anymore" is just so overgeneralizing and dismissive that it comes across to me as an excuse to complain about the current state of gaming for the sake of, well, complaining, rather than genuinely fostering a discussion that could lead to actual solutions for the whole deal. I know that my own video is but a drop in the ocean that is this dead horse of a topic, but hey, there's still so many people talking about the subject to this day, thus I wouldn't be able to get my mind off it if I didn't share my own 2 cents as well. With that in mind, thank you for humoring me by sticking till the end of this ramble. I do hope that you found our small chat at least a little interesting. For now though, this is all I wrote, so until next time, take care.